Hello, and thank you for joining me today on Live with a Purpose. Wishes, wishes, wishes. We're always wishing for something, and sometimes it's legitimate. Think of the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites back in Egypt. God had said in Genesis 15 that they were going to be in bondage, in slavery, in servitude for 400 years. And that is exactly what happened. And all this time they were pleading with God, hoping, wishing that God would save them. Get them out of there, get them out of that situation. Well, at the right time, in God's timing, God sent Moses, the deliverer, to bring them out of Egypt. And he brings them out. But what do they do almost immediately as he brings them out? They begin to complain. Where's the food? Where's the water? We had pretty good food in Egypt. Where are we going exactly? What's going on? You see, God knew that these people were stiff-necked, hard-nosed, hard-headed people. And that sometimes we're asking God to do certain things, but he knows really what's in our hearts, and he wants us to realize really what's behind it all. Sure, they wanted to be delivered from oppression, which makes sense. But they didn't really want God. They didn't really want his ways. They wanted to live the way they wanted to live, and yet they wanted him to do their bidding. They were looking for a Santa Claus, a genie in a bottle. But God is not any of those things. God calls us to be in relationship with him. And we have to decide for ourselves whether we want to be in his family or not. And so he put them to the test. I mean, how else were they going to find out if they really loved him or not? They did not know, but they were about to find out. In Exodus 13:17, they're going out. And it says, when Pharaoh finally let the people go, God did not lead them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the shortest route to the promised land. God said, if the people are faced with battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. That's from the New Living Translation. God knew their heart. He knew what was in their heart. In fact, later on, he walks them through the desert for 40 years until all the old people, all the adults died off, so he could start again with the young people. Because as it turns out, they had hardened hearts. They were set in their ways. They wanted God to do their bidding like they're in charge, like they're God. And they didn't want any obstacles. They didn't want any suffering. They wanted everything to go smooth sailing. And God could have sent them straight up, what is called the Via Maris, the way of the sea, right along the coast all the way up. They would have been there within a few weeks at most, with all the animals and elderly, maybe a few months they would have been in. But it took them 40 years because God walked them around the long way, walked them around in circles until those that were fighting him died off so he could start again. Because God is looking for people that are obedient. And none of them, and you sort of can't blame them, but wanted any hardship, even though that's all they got in Egypt. You see, once they understood that God was their deliverer, their true deliverer, they try to abuse the privilege and try to make him do things that they wanted, but God was having none of it. God is not going to be controlled by any one of us. And so they had all these wishes for the promised land, but none of them saw it because they were totally disrespectful. They were hard-headed. They were complaining all the time. Yes, they had a great wish to leave Egypt, to not be oppressed, and that should be understood by all of us. But at the same time, now what? He freed you, now what? And so God is always trying to get our attention. Do we really want him for him? Or are we just going to be selfish and think about ourselves and then tell God to move to the side so we can do whatever we want to do. God won't be played with. He is not like one of us. It's something to think about today. Thank you for joining me on Live with a Purpose.